Andrew Johnson was appointed president after the death of Abraham Lincoln. He grew up in the South, and like most Southerners, he was a devout Democrat and supported slavery. As a result, he quickly lost support from the Republican Party, claiming, "This is a country for white men, and as long as I am president, it shall remain a country for white men." The Republicans, who wanted to guarantee voting rights for the freed blacks, tried to pass the Reconstruction Acts, and each time the bill was passed in the House of Representatives but was denied in the Senate. The Reconstruction Acts guaranteed voting rights for the freedmen and prevented the former Southern rebels from regaining control of the state government. One of the reasons that the bill was not able to be passed was the fact that Andrew Johnson concentrated on the reestablishment of the Union, granting pardons to ex-rebels and allowing them to hold office in Congress. The first time Congress has overridden a presidential veto took place in 1866 after the Republicans won a majority in the House and the Senate through the passing of the Civil Rights Bill. The Civil Rights Bill was originally vetoed by President Johnson because it forbade discrimination against African Americans and defined U.S. citizenship. A few months later, Congress submitted the 14th Amendment to officially grant African Americans U.S. citizenship. President Johnson urged Southern states not to ratify the amendment. So, in 1867, when President Johnson defied the Tenure of Office Acts, which stated that the president must have Senate approval before dismissing a government official through the dismissal of his Secretary of War, 11 charges were made against Johnson, and the House of Representatives voted to begin his impeachment trials. None of the charges brought against Johnson cited his violation of the Tenure of Office Acts. One cited his opposition to the Army Appropriations Act of 1867, which took the power of the Commander-in-Chief of the U.S. Army away from the President, and the other accused Johnson of bringing into disgrace, ridicule, hatred, contempt, reproach the Congress of the United States through certain controversial speeches. When it came time for the ruling of the impeachment, each side of acquittal and of removal remained one vote short of the two-thirds majority needed to make a decision. As a result, Andrew Johnson remained in office through 1869. 51 years after the death of Andrew Johnson, the United States Supreme Court declared that the Tenure of Office Act was unconstitutional through the ruling in Myers v. United States. The act was found unconstitutional because the Constitution does not mention the removal of government positions, and the court interpreted that the right to dismiss officials was the sole power of the president because the president is given the explicit power to appoint officials. In conclusion, the impeachment trials of Andrew Johnson were only justifiable in the sense that Andrew Johnson worked tirelessly to undermine many of the acts of Congress. Johnson refused to implement many of the policy changes that were a result of the Civil War, granting pardons to ex-rebels and allowing them to hold office, and then urging them not to ratify the 14th Amendment. Johnson used his presidential power to manipulate Congress to promote his ideologies while ignoring the desires of the Republican Party, who were victorious in a war fought over who had the right of citizenship. Yet to say that the impeachment trials of Andrew Johnson were completely justifiable would be a violation of the U.S. Constitution. 9 of the 11 charges against Johnson were due to his violation of the Tenure of Office Acts because he dismissed his Secretary of War. Although he did violate the Tenure Acts, he did not violate the Constitution, as the Constitution does not mention who holds the power to dismiss government officials. Instead, it was ruled that the Tenure Acts were unconstitutional because the power to dismiss government officials was ruled an implicit power of the president, since the officials only held office because of the appointment of the president. Another one of the charges brought against Johnson stated his opposition to the Army Appropriations Act in 1867. The act took away the president's right of commander-in-chief of the United States Army, but Congress does not have the power to take away the president's explicit constitutional power, so Congress was not fair when they held his opposition against him, seeing that they were violating his constitutional powers. The final charge brought against Johnson stated that Congress and the president did not get along, and that Johnson worked endlessly against them, which was true, but Congress should not impeach a president simply because they do not work well together, although today that excuse might be feasible.